This meeting is hereby called to order. This is the July 16th, 2019 regular meeting of the Village of Oxford Planning Commission. Tonight's agenda will include only one topic. And so, as always, we will begin our discussion this night with a respect to the flag, please. Join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And one thing I might add, I'm very grateful that our village council and our planning commission do not dispense with that very important part of the meeting, as some communities are. I'll just throw that out there. Madam Secretary, would you be kind enough to call a roll, please?
Sure. Babo?
Here.
Curtis?
Here.
Cook? Here. Douglas?
Here.
Helmut?
Yes.
Ballard? Here. Pilot? Yes.
Good, thank you. It looks like we have all present and accounted for. Thank you all for taking the time to be here.
And for junior food run.
God, how are we going to get through this? Pardon me, everyone.
I'll make a motion to approve
I was
the
just going to
agenda
ask for that,
for
Jen.
July 16th, 2019, Village of Oxford Planning Commission.
I'll support.
All right, Madam Secretary, I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda and a second for that. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All right, tonight's agenda is approved with no additions or changes. I would now entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the 2nd of July, 2019 meeting, which are included in your packet.
So moved.
Support.
All right, once again, Madam Secretary, I have a motion to approve the minutes from the July 2nd, 2019 meeting, which are included in our packets. I have second for that, and so I would ask for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Good, thank you. Our minutes are approved. Now, Madam Secretary, I don't know if we have any correspondence for this evening's meeting. I think that we do not.
No
Good.
correspondence, just an addition to your packet with the PowerPoint presentation from the webinar today.
All right, good. I appreciate that. And that'll just become part of our packet without necessarily being filed as correspondence. All right, no public hearing tonight, so we will skip over item 7. We have one item under old business, which is a continuing discussion of our efforts to create an ordinance for the village council regarding the adult use of marijuana. And that will continue on with our discussion with Mario. I would like to request a motion from somebody on the commission to have us formally adopt the spelling of marijuana as M-A-R-I-J-U-A-N-A rather than H. Could I have a motion for that?
I would like to say the state spelling with an H, and I would prefer to not, of all the regulations we're messing up right now, I would like to stay with the H.
One thing, not to keep jumping into the discussion, but number one, you probably see what the attorney's opinion was eventually of all of the things we're doing here. But number two, my inclination during this first set of reviews was to put a sentence in that says marijuana is equivalent to M-A-R-I-J-H-U-A-N-A found in the state statutes. So therefore, our ordinance could, I believe, that would work. But if we reflected it, but then we just utilized.
Spell both.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's equivalent.
I don't want to get all the way through all this and all of a sudden an attorney will come up and say, this is not right, this is a J and not an H.
Well, we'll definitely have our attorney review all of this to make sure that nothing like that can ever happen.
Yeah.
But I think from a layperson standpoint, I believe that that one sentence in the ordinance, in theory, should cover us, but I will defer to the attorney.
Don't use marijuana, this can be spelled in either direction.
That's right.
Exactly.
All right, so that request has died for lack of a motion, so I'll move on. All right, Mario, we would just ask that you pick up where you left off last week, and we'll take it from there.
So, thank you everyone for bearing with me as I write into this without your usual week to review it, but luckily, so far, this hasn't been too onerous in terms of volume. First thing I did was attempt to make some revisions based on our discussion from last time. So, and if you have a color version in front of you, the italicized, or black and white, the italicized text is the new text from our last meeting. So the first thing I added was a definition for marijuana, and that's basically right out of the state statute for adult use of marijuana. And then I also felt it necessary to also include the marijuana accessories definition in paragraph 2, because we do reference marijuana accessories into our item 7 marijuana retailer definition. So just to ensure that people understand what we're referring to in terms of marijuana accessories.
I had one question,
Mhm.
and I think it was just a line that was in, well, there was two questions, but I didn't remember one. Under D5, we talk about 120 continuous hours, the perimeter.
Mhm.
If you read that, I think it's in there twice.
Oh, okay. Well, we get there and definitely change that, so it's not.
Yeah, there was something else, but I'm gonna have to find it.
In terms of other, so those are our definitions. I don't know if anyone has any question on them, but then the next major thing that changed from the original language you saw was paragraph B originally just listed permitted facilities, and at the time I was thinking it'd be sufficient to just, if we say it's permitted, then that's sufficient enough. So even though it adds more volume, to err on the side of caution, and because I found other situations in which we would want to explicitly say what is prohibited, I did add paragraph 2 and indicate things that are prohibited, because we had a discussion about mixed use, for lack of a better term, having, another user or use located on the same site as the marijuana facility. So paragraph A is just to try and say that, no, the marijuana use is the only thing that would be indicated on only one operating on that property. And then number 2, I found that it probably would be important to specify that home occupations and accessory uses could not be similarly, could not be just indicated for
I
marijuana.
really like that.
Yeah.
Simply because it's the same concept. We don't want to mix our uses when it comes to this particular use right off the bat.
Terry,
Right now, it's just dedicated to.
are we missing every other page?
No. It's front and back, it's double-sided, yours starts on, but you see the one that Jack gave you. It's got the blue writing.
I think there's a color on it.
Yeah, flip the color.
'Cause I loved everything I had at work.
All right.
Yeah, there you go.
Boy, it looked more like.
So, yeah, and please, as always, feel free to interrupt.
If you don't mind, I would
Oh,
like to.
absolutely, yes.
All right, in my very quick skimming of the rules, there's about 64 pages. What I noticed is that they were rather extensive in the number of definitions that they included in their rules. Do we want to consider expanding our section, or is what we have adequate? First and foremost, pardon me, I'm sorry, I noticed that I believe that there are additional use cases that have been created in the rules that were published. And so we would probably need to incorporate at the very least those, but then we may want to consider adding additional definitions. I leave that to
I have the
Group
same
discussion.
question about I think the event, temporary event, but there were 3 or 4 new classifications
Right.
added. So do we name those out as prohibited, or do we add those to permitted, or what do we do?
So right now, the way I just have it, the way this works, and once again, you can tell me if we want to add any of those new facilities or any existing facilities that you think you would want to include in the village. But right now, I kept it with grower, processor, retailer, micro business and state compliance facility. And then paragraph C goes to the idea that rather than just implying, paragraph C subparagraph C under number 2
Right,
says any marijuana facility not listed
right.
above will be prohibited. So in the future, or now even, if we wanted to change, add a paragraph, F, G, or H under paragraph 1, we could do that. And it will just be explicitly listed there, and then anything else that they come up with. Because that's one thing about the new rules that just came out, they basically took it upon themselves, as I thought, because of the definition of marijuana facility in the state statute. It specifically says the regulatory authority can determine another use is appropriate and give a license to it. So that's why they've created this, and who knows what they'll create in the future. So I think I think paragraph C, 2C is gonna cover us, because, if in August they come up with another one, and then if in the October of 2020 they come up with another one, they can, obviously they can do that, they're allowed to, but then the village can step back and say, all right, do we want to allow that? And then at that point in time, we can change the ordinance, like in the future, like if in 2020 or whenever, we want to expand it, or if we want to contract it, we can do whatever we like.
All right, so, Marty, I want to take the floor for a minute, if you don't mind. During our last meeting, I asked if we wanted to censure and/or limit the use cases that we would submit to council in this ordinance. Mo very vociferously spoke out against that. And I thought rightly so. She suggested that we should give an unadulterated version of this ordinance to council and let them decide what they want to include. Because we're not the lawmaking body, we're writing an ordinance for them to determine whether or not this is what they like or not. They could choose to strike 6 of these classes out of there because they don't want that in the village. And so because of that, and Mo, I appreciate what you said, and I respect what you said, and I thank you very much. Huh?
That's so scary.
It's not at all. I'm easy to impress, actually. I think that we should actually include all of the use cases that are currently listed in the rules document from the state. And I also like the inclusion of C. However, I don't know if I necessarily want to automatically prohibit it. I personally think that statement should say, any additions that the state comes up with would automatically be included into this ordinance unless action was taken by the council to request that we specifically strike that use. And also, if council looks at this ordinance and says, we don't want this, and this, we're gonna add a section here that says, these are use cases specifically prohibited within the confines of the bill, and list the ones that they would reject, if any. If there, suppose there were some. I don't propose to read the mind of council, but should they decide to strike some of those use cases, then we would specifically list them as prohibited use cases. Comments?
I think, I am also wondering if the council wants our recommendations. I mean, the ordinance language outside the use list, let's call it the use list, I don't know what else to refer to it right now. I think they're hoping that what we will put together is in fact something that they could enact and that they wouldn't have to double think it. When it comes to the type of uses, I'm curious as to whether we develop an ordinance with potential uses, just as you say, but that we may want to have a way to communicate, we have recommendations in that regard, based on our understanding of the community, our community feedback process, and other kinds of input, so that they're not operating without that information. So I guess I want to throw that out there too. Is there a way to do both? Is there a way to leave it open and at the same time make recommendations?
You have a council member sitting right behind you, and if counselor chooses to speak for the council, I think that
I can only say that as a member of the council, I would think you guys would give us your best suggestion. This is what we think is best for the village. This is what we think is our best recommendation. And if we look at it and go, well, they think in micro businesses, we want to take that out. Then we'll do that. I would hate for the council to do that. I think this planning commission is smart enough. We're gonna hold public hearings, we're gonna listen to public input. I always feel like if this planning commission gives us this, then we should go with this unless we would, they want to see one trans, we prefer to see two, and cut the C1 trans. But I don't really believe in changing what the planning commission recommends, because I think this body's put so much thought into it that we're not just acting on it. And as long as we put detailed thought into it, I would like to think the council would respect the final product. But that's just me. 1 of 5. 2 of 5 is sitting over there, but I'm not gonna put her on the spot.
If I may, frankly, I echo a lot of Mo's opinions. If, for example, there's a reason you don't think a grow facility should be within the village, I'd like to hear why, because I appreciate your thoughts. I don't know if, I can only speak for myself, however.
I currently like the way Mario has it as far as the original, and not the added 3 that they're adding here. I'd like to keep it exactly the way Mario has it currently written.
The added 3.
What, the event?
4.
My only, I wonder if we should add definitions for them,
Well,
just to have the definition, and even not mention it in the body, let's say. Because in the zoning ordinance, we have all kinds of things that aren't mentioned in the body. This is what a transport is. And we don't feel they need to be licensed. We don't feel they need to be licensed. You know what I mean, Mario?
yeah. I think, when it comes to the different types of uses, number one, if we were to try and craft an ordinance that included everything that they've come up with to this point in time, including the events and the smoke shop, I don't know what to call the other one.
Consumption establishment.
Consumption establishment. Yeah, hookah bar. Whatever term, consumption establishment. Whether it's a consumption establishment or a safety, or a event, the only issue we face if we wanted to include them now is then there are specific attributes of those uses that we'd have to discuss and try and regulate. For example, when it comes to events, how big can it get? Is it inside or is it outside? To me,
Public or private?
is it a public event, private event? To me, can they use the right of way of the village? Can they block off, verdict in both directions? So those are the specific, if we wanted to, we can definitely delve into that. But then if we create them for the sake of just giving the council the option of, if we could, but it all depends on, what we prefer.
To me, it raises the question because they've been called out with the other ones in the rules. And I kind of feel like since I think since we're clarifying prohibited facilities, mixed-use prohibited home occupation, if we didn't want to include these as permitted, I think we should name them right out of the rules, under ABC, DEF, whatever. But I think that's a decision we should make and actually name them, since they're legally identified already in the rules.
Well, I think that might be an attorney question, and it's like, I think at this point with our discussions, we'll see about at what point to include the attorney review. Maybe it needs to be before every meeting or every other. But, because from once again, my layperson standpoint, I would think that when paragraph C, that one sentence that says, any marijuana facility not listed shall be prohibited, that is
That should
sufficient.
cover it.
It should cover it, but when, we'd have to give the attorney's opinion, but I
Okay.
think,
And should the name change, or they add something, or take something out, that sentence kind of encompasses,
I wouldn't take C out ever.
no, but not specifically list the other additions.
Yeah, Mario, in the webinar today, they actually stated that the permanent rule structure will not be in place until July of next year. So they expect what they give the 64 pages to change.
Okay. So that suggests that it may be a little premature to worry about marijuana event, organize a temporary marijuana event and designate the consumption establishment.
So the only place in the village any of this can be done is on Glassby Street in the I-1 district.
In terms of,
Anything.
if we move forward, we can get to that in a moment, but technically there's one other spot.
One,
I think I read there was another.
There is another.
I haven't found that that's not 1,000 feet from a church.
No, you got your father.
No, it's not, well, we don't have churches listed as a prohibited boundary area.
While the church has a daycare in it.
But I wonder if church daycares are,
I still think there's one.
License, did you know?
right,
Yeah.
License.
meets that definition for,
Holy
Are we
cross.
getting up to that point now?
No, I'm just throwing something out here so that we don't go spinning in the mud.
well, it
And
does,
develop rules and not have any place you can sell it, buy it, smoke it.
and that's what I was gonna mention that too as well, Jack, you're right, because if we have the list of different uses, we would, especially if we specifically say they could be in the village, we do have to define we do have to allow it for somewhere in the village.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
then all the other regulations of it could impact it. So you would have opened it up to more locations. So we can't just say, these are allowed, but then it's called zoning out, zoning them out by buffering, having so many buffers that they can't exist.
I got the right leading question, don't
I
I?
think that's right.
Because we're working on something that we're zoning out by all the other rules. 1,000 feet from schools, childcare facilities, and similar facility buffer. You're zoning everybody.
I think 1,000 feet is excessive.
Didn't we talk about that last time?
We talked about 500, which is what Mario originally put in.
What's the state law?
And I think Kelsey said the state law said 1,000.
But we have the ability
To make it less.
to make it
Right.
whatever
Right.
we want.
We can't, I don't know if we can make it less than, I'd have to read the state, I'd have to check the language to see what it would allow us to, because typically it's the more, typically the more prohibitive regulation
Even at the-
applies. So if
Even at
there's,
1,000 feet, there's still property at the south end of Glassby that's legal, correct?
correct.
Yes.
And I'm just gonna say what I don't know what everybody else is thinking or not. This is the first year marijuana is legal. In 5 years, rules are gonna relax, people are gonna think differently. All of a sudden it's gonna be, let's allow us in the C2, let's allow us in the C1 transition. And everything's gonna be, well, we've had 5 years, how's it gone? And that's what's gonna happen is, you have to see what the true effects of this are. Then you expand your zoning ordinance if it needs to be expanded. If it's a problem, you retract your zoning ordinance. So this is the starting place, this is the beginning of what happens in 2019, 2020 to the United States of America. Colorado, I'm sure, has expanded and contracted their laws. Every state that allows us to expand and contract, and Michigan will do the same thing. And that's just my thought. So whatever we allow now is not gonna be what we allow in 5 years. I'm gonna eat some pizza now.
They did say that you can't take it away once you allow it. You can add to it, but you
The
cannot.
existing, you mean?
Right, so if you say that it's okay to be a grower, you cannot all of a sudden pass an ordinance and say, we're not gonna allow this anymore. You cannot contract that.
But you can say it's to be a grower in this district, and then they become legal non-conforming,
Right,
correct?
that's usually the way it works.
Right.
Yeah, well, I guess it's a question for the attorney. 'cause
Yeah,
that's not
that
the way I
would-
understand it, but if
So
that was
let's
a
make that
concern.
a question for the attorney then.
There's probably just a legal risk of doing that and being challenged and sued. I mean, there's gonna be a ton of lawsuits that come out of this law.
For
So
what?
that'd be
Yeah.
one of them, yeah.
I definitely think that you couldn't take it away if someone can make the case through a lawsuit that they approached the village, they talked about it, and then the village turned around and wrote an ordinance prohibiting it.
I would never consider
Then
closing
that would
business.
be, then that would be definitely where we'd be in trouble. But,
It'd be changed for new business,
right.
but not for the existing.
Correct. All right, let me pull us back to definitions for a minute, Mario. I would like to close this if we can, because it'd be nice if we could actually finish something and then move on to the next thing. And that's a nice way to get through this. I think that we should consider adding additional definitions to your list. And in particular, I'd like to see the definitions for the additional use cases, at least in the definitions. And then Justin, I would like you to consider, if you want, make an argument for pro or against those additional use cases that were addressed in the rules, because you made it sound like you were very certain that you did not want to include those under B1 for permitted facilities. And you could certainly do that. But, you know, I mean, if you are able to persuade everybody that you think those are bad uses, then we'll just leave them fall under C. Or we'll just leave them fall under C.
I think at this point in time, just getting through the minimum amount of different type of facilities that we have, and that how our community is currently right this minute, is that it's best if we don't keep adding additional options for what we're doing. Let's get through this a little bit, and as time goes on, we can always add it in the future. To say, all right, this is working well in our community. People are receptive to it. It's going good. All right, let's add these other things. Let's add the. We can always add. We can't take it back, right? So this way, it's.
One thing,
My only thought is I have to see in writing.
See what?
Everything in writing, and work on paper.
one other way that I know other communities have looked at this is that when it first of all, when people state that, all right, 60% or 70% of people voted for this, so therefore we must allow it. Some people are taking the opinion that they did vote for individuals to consume it, but they also at the same time approved the statute, which includes the ability for the municipality to control it, just like any other use. So it's not necessarily that because it was voted upon, it must be an unregulated use. So I think that's one aspect of it. And then number two, when it comes to the current licenses that were just allowed in terms of consumption facility and an event, basically those are the two. They have the event licensee, which is just a separate license that says someone can be the organizer of the event. To me, grower, processor, and retailer are those type of, it's the infrastructure to create a quality product for people and to process it and to provide it to residents to consume in their own home, which is what they're already allowed to do right now. People can do it on their own, and people can grow it on their own and do it and consume it in their own home. But there are specific requirements in the ordinance, in the state's law, that says that you can't drive while doing this, you can't do it in public. The intent of the original law was to allow people to consume it on their own. Now, with these new events, the regulating authority has taken the opinion that, well, we should allow it as a public consumption activity. So it's basically what it is. It's basically allowing people to have an event where they can,
Instead of a beer tent, you got a pot tent.
exactly, have that kind of thing. And, if that's if that seems successful, then that's fine. But I think a dividing line you guys can consider. And if you want to include it, we can. But it's just a matter of, right now, as written, this is about creating the infrastructure and allowing people to consume it in their own home. You go, you buy it, that's why I look at it from a zoning standpoint. It's just a person walking to an establishment, they're purchasing a product, they're taking it home. That's all they're doing.
So these use cases that we've defined here all support that.
I'll support that.
Just that non-public,
From my,
non-public or
And
non.
they seem more business related. It's an
Right.
actual, those are businesses that will actually give us another establishment, put something on our tax rolls. We'll maybe hopefully develop some property that's still vacant, we could build another warehouse, or make the events and those other things. I think those are fun activities, and that's having the circus come in, that's having something else come in. No, that's something I think completely different at this point in time compared to what we're looking at right
All
now.
right, I'm good with that. I appreciate that. Mario, and I would like to ask one more time, would you please add the definition for those use cases under our definitions? But ultimately, we're going to allow, for the time being, all of those additional use cases to fall under paragraph 2C, 2C.
You're adding the 4 pieces?
Yes, only as definitions.
As under A.
I'm putting those under A for definitions, Jack,
Okay.
because because they are, right now, they're currently defined, and so I think we should include, so that anybody who reads the ordinance would know that we didn't skip over those.
I appreciate
Got
that.
I do.
I think that's how it should be.
I think we can define, I think only house as, transport,
Right.
anything.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't ignored you, here you are. Let's go.
All right, so then, is everybody happy with the 5 use cases that we've defined under B1? Justin, are there any things in there that you are not happy with?
No, I'm good.
B1,
B1.
B1A, or B1, under B1,
Oh,
those 5 use cases. All right, then also, Mario, I like the idea of mixed use prohibited. I know we had talked about that. Is there any discussion that we should have about mixed use? The idea of being able to walk into a gas station and buy some marijuana?
If the state is recommending only dispensary for adult marijuana,
I don't know about that.
that's a question then tomorrow.
I'm sorry, what was it?
Is the state recommending single source dispensaries for adult use marijuana?
Or no mixed use, according to
Or
your.
can I bring it up?
For them, they're not getting involved in the location of it specifically.
Okay, so then.
They're allowed to
We would,
mixed
yeah,
use.
that's taking the next step up.
The
Make it
state
some,
today just authorized the mobile gas station.
Correct.
You know, not to sell booze.
right.
Right.
No one knows it.
Yeah, I heard of something on Facebook. They were celebrating the fact that they could sell alcohol now.
Yeah.
Well,
But, yeah,
they
they
did say no, there would be no co-locating of any
Then we
any
get.
other business activity. No co-location with any other business activity.
It doesn't hurt us to step away.
Yeah, well, no, just so that you know, that's where they're at.
All right, so that covers 2A. 2B,
2B.
obviously no home, you can't run a professional grow business out of your home. You
But
can
you
grow it
can-
for yourself, but you can't grow it and package it and sell it.
But I can grow medical marijuana in my home.
They go for it.
No, what I'm saying is, you have medical marijuana growers growing in their home. We're saying you can't grow it to sell out of your home.
That's what it sounds like.
Yep.
But the medical marijuana people are selling it out of their home.
But they're licensed separately.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because,
So that we're clear.
right, because,
I don't wanna get caught zoning them out.
right, and that's because
We already acted out.
the new law
We don't
does
have
give
to
us
say
the
people.
opportunity to regulate it and regulate it where they go, whereas the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, did not give the municipalities any powers when it comes to certified caregivers. And now, through trial and error of ordinances and through lawsuits, they're allowed to operate anywhere. Technically, they could even be located in any kind of warehousing facility. If they're
Because
certified
I'm
caregivers.
gonna throw this question out there just to be devil's advocate every once in a while. Because everybody in this room can grow pot in their yard and in their house.
Yes,
As long as it's not visible from the
as
street.
long as you're not trying to sell
I wouldn't, I'd sell the bag.
it. Sell the t-shirt, right?
You can gift it.
You can
You
sell
can
the
barter
t-shirt
it.
and give the marijuana away.
For the kid, for the
You
adult that paints your fence,
could.
you can give them the marijuana.
I just throw this out there so that you can get, it's fodder for thinking. You don't have
I don't
no
like fodder.
occupation, but I got 12 plants growing right there.
Do we talk about that in this?
In terms of,
what Jack just said.
A private individual.
Private individual,
No, because we're regulating the business facility, so that's why our definitions are slightly tweaked from the
Okay.
state. That We're
okay.
talking about facilities and
Right,
businesses.
Okay, just businesses,
Mhm.
all right.
And because I don't recall the language in my head, but I would be 95% certain that a local municipality couldn't regulate a right granted by the state to a certain individual.
Right.
To an individual resident.
So if you had a $75 t-shirt business running out of your home, that would be okay.
Well,
That's the,
That's-
that's
that's
the
the-
police department to enforce,
Yeah.
or another municipality as far as law enforcement to enforce, not the, I would say, not the village or the planning commission.
because then at that point, it would be a violation of, a violation of this law, and then it's whatever authority is granted. So you're right, it would be the police
All right.
that would violate, that would.
Okay, is everybody good through 2C? Any other comments?
I have a concern about the public park buffer.
Or we're not there yet?
We're on 2C, aren't we?
We're,
Oh, you know what?
Two
This
C,
was-
or,
I'm missing partial pages on there.
we're on 2C. So I just want to make sure that everybody's good through 2C.
I'm
B.
Just finish the bottom of that page at the top.
Thank you.
So we stop
Okay,
right
so
there.
I'm on 3C maybe.
No, you were on
Well,
2C.
let's see.
We're not there yet.
B2C.
It's the little C, not the big C.
All right, so it sounds to me like we're good
Little
through
C word for me.
B2 little c. Okay, so now, Mario, please go ahead and take it away with talking about discussion.
So I did have a chance to take a look at the location, and as you mentioned, Council, you did see that, and it's correct, that in the ordinance, in the state law, it does say 1,000 feet. It says, but it does specifically say, unless a municipality adopts an ordinance that reduces this distance required.
That's what I remember. That's the only reason I suggested 500 feet. Because I know that they had granted us permission to be able to make a smaller buffer if we chose to. And my only concern about making it for 500 feet was that I thought if we left it at 1,000, we have postage stamp size parcels of property that we could run a business out of. And like Jack said, what do you call it, zoning out? You end up zoning out this, because there's not enough space available for you to be able to even consider trying to make businesses.
And the definition that gives us that authority also specifically says, not within 1,000 feet of a pre-existing public or private school providing education in kindergarten or any of grades 1 through 12. So daycares are not listed. And probably the reason for that is that technically, a family group home or family daycare home could be any residence within the village that has a license for 6 or less children, and then technically it's not a daycare facility, but it's a child care facility, and so that would also impact, given that our size, that would impact the amount of space available to allow for something. So should we change it back to 500, or?
What if we kept the 1,000, but only use the language in the state statute that limits 1,000 feet from a public or private school providing the K through 12? I don't know what that would look like on the map, but that way we got rid of the child care center, licensed daycare facility, preschool. That's that map that we saw.
Oh,
before.
right, yeah.
Yeah,
So we could eliminate
so that
the,
gives us more space.
It's 1,000 feet.
Right.
It's the,
right.
All right, Kelsey, are you really, are you hard on 1,000 feet?
Not necessarily. I'm just taking into consideration some of the public comment that I've heard about just having a concern. I think that would alleviate some public's concern that are concerned about, how it's gonna look in our community if it was just separated from the schools we have. I know one of them is the virtual academy, and I'm not sure what that even is, honestly. Is
Oh,
that-
the one on,
Marketplace.
in
Yeah.
Market. Yeah,
No,
the
it's-
marketplace, yeah, the
yeah,
village
it's-
marketplace, yeah. That would technically meet the public or private school, because it's
It
a
is.
facility, but
Okay.
then it would be within 500 feet of that parcel boundary. So then,
So the first one who gets a lot on Gillespie Street will be the only one in town.
so, I'm sorry, what?
The first person to buy the parcel on Glassby Street will be the only one in town.
Well, actually,
Yeah, because don't we
in
put
terms of the
a,
C2.
we also put a buffer around the
Between
facility.
each other.
Once a facility
But
is
that's-
established,
That's
we
another
put
thing
a
that we
buffer
do.
around that.
Because you've got a buffer between similar facilities buffer. You've got buffers between schools, childcare facilities, parks,
But,
One other,
stricter parks.
but one thing that we have is 3 is optional. A buffer around other marijuana facilities is an option. You can have, and we can change that if we want to.
Then you have to change 1 too, because it's similar facilities.
I personally think 1,000 feet is just a really, maybe too extreme in our community to allow for very many options. And I like consistency, I'm just that sort of a person, so I like the 500-foot consistency throughout. And maybe that's oversimplifying, but I'd rather see the childcare facilities of all kinds grouped together, but have a 500-foot limit, because that's the public parks limit and the marijuana facilities limit. So that's consistent, and I think it's easy for people to grasp personally. So that may open up 1 or 2 other locations, and I think that looks, to me, it looks like we're making more of an effort to be fair across the board.
the way it would work is that, because I've done it,
I'm sorry.
there would be there would be 1 on the north side, and there could be 3 located in the Iowa district.
Yeah, I don't know if you even have one in place on Glassby Street, because if you do 1,000 feet from a park.
Well, the park was never
Park's
1,000,
500.
park's 500.
So maybe could we do this then?
And then not only that, but it's, you guys have the community facilities map?
Hey, I actually have a question, and I apologize, I left the room. How do we define a park?
Well, that's one of the things that, that we did discuss last time, that I didn't have a chance to find an actual, suitable definition,
Because it's
for
on the
that,
left
because.
side of Oxford Lakes Drive is not a park.
Right, but the key to this is that Oxford Lake Park is a private recreation.
Yeah.
The definition I have right now is for public parks. And then technically Scripps Village Park, their parcel boundary ends at the curve inside Glassby. So by the time you get 500 feet from that, you can fit at least 2 on Glassby, if not 3.
I would think 500 feet from this green mark, is this a green mark or is it this line?
All right, step back from Park Street, because we're not there yet, and I want to hear what Justin, because I want to try to resolve item number 1.
That's what I was trying to get at. Let's get back to number 1.
Before we talk about parks, let's stay focused and consider how, I'm with Kelsey. I want this ordinance to go forward, and I want the community to support it. I want them to recognize the fact that we're trying a very delicate balancing act. We're trying to provide facility for the people who want to come in here and conduct business. We're also trying to protect our community, and especially our children,
Yes.
from exposure to this type of behavior that they need to be shielded from. And so some balance there has to be struck that can try to accomplish both of those. Justin, please.
No, that's exactly what I was trying to do. I was
You
going
know,
to say,
so-
hey, let's get back to number 1.
Mike,
Let's get that.
Leslie, I heard what you said, and I agree with almost all of it. My concerns, and especially by incorporating preschool, and I include preschool to be everything from daycare from a 6-month-old infant up through 5 years old, you know, any pre-public school or private school, pre-K, okay? Pre-K, any kind of pre-K activity.
Yeah, any
It could be anywhere. It could, you know, any person, I don't even know if they have to be licensed. I think it's just some mom in a house, some person in a house, sorry. Some person in a house is gonna take care of the neighbor's kids while everybody goes to work. I doubt that person might even be licensed.
Oh, no, they have to be licensed.
They're supposed
That
to be.
person-
They're supposed to.
well,
I know, Marty, I
well,
know
they-
they're supposed to,
they really
but, you know, here's the scenario. Somebody's running a daycare, childcare thing out of their house. A marijuana center opens up 2 houses away, and somebody puts up their hand and says, hey, I got a daycare center here.
Well, the issue would be then, when that person raises their hand, we'd
No,
have
but
to,
still.
but then we'd have to
I
say-
hear you. I
But
hear
if
you.
you're a
go to a
daycare
license.
provider,
But I'm thinking about the PR aspect of this.
Right. No, I see.
You can.
but if you're writing that, legal or illegal, it doesn't matter. Those kids should not be 500 feet
Yeah.
from the daycare center without an adult. So I think, 1,000 feet, they're from my house to Scripter Park, and I live way over here. 1,000 feet, a
Almost
daycare
quarter.
center, I have no problem with 500
Almost a
feet.
quarter mile.
Yeah.
one other aspect, just to consider in your discussions, is the idea that you have to remember the whole idea, the whole inherent rights given by us regulating and allowing these marijuana facilities into the village, it means that we're enabling them with property rights. So that means, while I understand the public perception and they want to feel that it's a far enough away to be safe, because you're regulating it and then letting them in, they have to have their rights established, and that's what this does. And so, when someone raises their hand, if they say, well, I take care of my 2 cousins and my nephews, you know, if anybody can raise their hand and say that, then this person we're trying to give the rights to, it will get run out of town. So that's why unfortunately, we would have to ask them, can I see your state license? Because because the state says anyone that takes care of a child, even one child that is not their own, has to be licensed.
All right, so do we want to
So-
incorporate the idea of pre-K in this?
I'm not.
Leslie?
Well, it
This is just a
is,
straw poll.
it is in here.
Well, I know,
I
but this
mean,
is just straw man. We can cut anything out of here that's in here. It doesn't have to
Right.
stay. I mean, Mario puts this stuff down so we can knock it down or build it up, whatever we
well,
want to do.
I guess I keep coming back to the idea of a licensed facility, if it's a licensed preschool program,
was where I was gonna go.
you know,
Yeah.
that's, to me.
Because to me, see, that covers,
You have to have
both
a
ends of it,
definition
yeah.
that you're going by.
yeah.
So if someone takes care of preschoolers but is not licensed, then I guess I would say, well, they really don't qualify as the 500 feet limit then.
That's what I was gonna say.
So
So
one
Mario,
other, one other aspect.
Well, I'm
just-
recommending that, well, not I recommend, my feeling is that 1,000 is too far
right.
under this rule. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna, for your information, when it says childcare center or licensed daycare facilities, I'm relatively sure that those two are only allowed in our C districts anyway, because they're for facilities that are for 12 or more children. So that's just for your information. So we would only be talking about facilities like, Once Upon a Child kind of situation, where it's a commercial facility located on commercial property, those two. But you're right, the relevant question is the preschool program center. That kind of isn't defined, you might need a definition for that in our general definitions, if you wanted to include it. So you tell me if you'd like to include it or remove it.
So Mario, let me ask you this. Are the 3 pre-K that we have here, are they mutually exclusive?
You mean the childcare, I see.
The idea of childcare center, licensed daycare facility, or preschool program center, I mean, do you see those as being 3 distinct things that are legally defined, or are they just 3 ways to talk about the same thing?
The childcare center and a licensed daycare facility, I believe, you might sound like it's splitting hairs, but I do believe there are different licenses for those at the state. The preschool program center is the one that I'm not sure of, so I'd have to check that
I
list.
think the preschool program center is like one of the things that my kids go to at, like DA in the morning or OELC.
Latchkey type thing?
Yeah, it's kind of like, currently right now they're at the middle school because the
Yeah.
middle
Oh,
schools.
right.
So it's like this, just where the kids go.
How are those
are
hours?
school, those are school program centers.
Sort
You
of.
have to be in
So there
school.
might be.
It's like a latchkey type.
You're in
of
3rd grade before you
Right.
go to something like that, but you're not preschool to go into that.
Well, no,
You
you
are
would go there
preschool.
when you're an old 4 or
Yeah.
a young 5.
Yep, correct.
So my kid was born in December, so he can't go to kindergarten. So he's gotta wait another year, so it goes to pre-K.
Most of that stuff is conducted in the schools though, so it's
Holy Cross.
Right.
Um,
And Holy Cross would
Right.
be on the list,
Right.
because they're a licensed daycare
I'm just
provider.
thinking my own kids.
Okay,
Holy
so
Cross
is the key then for these three centers that they be licensed? Is it necessary for all three of these things to be licensed to qualify for a boundary?
Yes,
Or a buffer?
in my opinion, yes.
So Mario, if everybody agrees, could we state in that language that those types of centers must be licensed by the state?
Question.
In another ordinance.
So in reality in Oxford, so for example, like,
Yeah, Oxford, that's a great sentence. We need to get that on t-shirts.
so we're looking at, so the OCES, Oxford Early Learning, whatever, I'm not very familiar with it, but I know they accept, 6 weeks all the way up to their preschool program.
Yep.
So although they're not, so if we remove the whole daycare aspect out of our draft ordinance and just went with the K through 12, in effect, it would still keep the distance for the young kids in that facility because they happen to be in the same building as the K through 12 kids. So I'm wondering, is there other like preschools in Oxford that we're worried about?
That is a very good point, because that's really what it would be. If we include these other definitions, then the number of facilities that suddenly get a buffer could increase to the point of zoning them out.
I'm gonna tell you there are, but they're in churches.
Okay.
So I'm reading this, the Methodist Church on Burdick Street has one. Holy Cross Lutheran on 106 has one.
Okay, so does the church have to have a licensed daycare?
Yes,
They do have to be
they are
licensed.
licensed,
Okay.
they're regulated
All
by
right.
the state,
Okay,
inspected by the state.
okay.
So I'd like to see a map then of like, if we're gonna do more than just what the state says, which is 1,000 from K through 12, we're gonna do more, including the licensed childcare facilities, then what would that look like on a map?
Just that the Methodist one, basically, probably,
That's, I'm gonna get my compass. when
you can
Yeah.
probably rule out the whole downtown.
Okay.
Literally the whole center of downtown.
Well, remember, right now,
You zone them out.
Yeah,
remember, in our permitted districts, we're only talking about the I-1 and the C2. So they're not even allowed in the C1 core or C1 transition.
Really serious, if you're only going 500 feet from 32 East Burdick, which is the Methodist Church, that probably takes you through mostly residential into the downtown. You're talking OES,
Here's the 500 scale too.
yeah, that's almost all residential. The one at 136 South Washington, I'm sure cuts into a little bigger industrial out of town if it's only 500 feet. And those are gonna be your daycare centers. I just happened to work at those weeks once, those,
And then,
and it might be, is there a new church? I mean, if there's a
Well-
new
The
church.
Baptist church has a childcare facility as well, but is that more residential? Just to keep it in the back of our mind.
150 Pontiac Street,
Oh, is that, I don't
What
know,
I'm
I'm talking
talking
about, I'm
about.
sorry.
by the apartments.
Yeah,
Yeah.
See, most of that's gonna be the township too,
okay.
which means that we have to think about the township. I prefer not to, sorry, Jack, just be honest.
Well, then we don't.
You don't have to.
We don't
Well,
think about
seriously.
township with this. This is just for the village.
but,
But it does affect the people who live in the township, and if this building
ordinance-
wanted to be
it
a
doesn't-
big old pie,
It doesn't spill over. It would follow the boundary of the village.
it doesn't spill over, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't consider it. If we don't wanna put something in the middle of the township residential district, just because our boundaries are crazy. You're right, we don't have to consider them, but as human beings, we should think about it.
So
It should be in
if
the
there's
back
a
of our
school
minds.
right on the boundary, obviously we would take that into consideration.
I would think there was a school,
We would add a buffer zone around that school.
maybe not as big, but yes, absolutely. If it came close to encroaching our district, we cut it back. It's something to think about.
what I can do is, when it comes to these type of facilities, they are licensed, and there's a registry at the state. So I can go online, I can get the addresses for all the facilities both within and adjacent to the village, and then I can use GIS, and I can create the setbacks for each buffer, and then I can provide you with maps.
Okay, good, thank you. Kelsey, would you accept 500 feet?
Yeah, and I think it'd be
And I can-
excellent to see the GIS and mapping,
And I can
because
do,
a lot of
500
this
feet?
isn't gonna really make a difference.
And you
and
don't
I can easily
Did you
do
go
both.
with that?
more than
And
Well,
Gary, I can easily provide you guys with both. I can provide you with 500, I can provide you.
Well, I'd like to lighten your load a little bit.
Oh, no, it's, by the time it's in there,
Mo,
it's easy.
Would you go with 1,000 or 500 feet?
Yes, I'd love to see what.
I know you will.
it is.
500 feet.
Okay.
Jack, sorry, I meant,
I'm fine.
I forgot to ask you. You can say no.
No, I would like to see 500 feet.
Good,
Because
thank you.
you're gonna limit your number of your
I agree,
properties.
I agree. I think,
Down so low,
Yeah.
you're not gonna have.
yeah. Justin?
But if, like, the thing is this, is that we're limiting the number, but if you really take a look at basically our facilities that we're having, right, the facilities that we're doing, most of these are done and conducted in industrial buildings. So just to let everybody know, most of the, like, all your
So
big
is the
facilities
seminar.
are in. The only one that's not is your retailer. That's the
Right.
only one that's not gonna
But
probably
that,
be.
even that could be done.
And that can be an industrial as well.
I mean, there's no reason why this has to be a frontage. You know,
I
it
love to
doesn't,
hand these out, I'm so good.
it doesn't need to be on 24.
Yeah. I mean, really,
It
because
should be some of the else other way, and now there's some of these there.
Okay.
If you look in our zoning ordinance, we allow for retail smoke shops in our industrial district. For marijuana was even thought about, we put smoke shops in our industrial district. You know, Wild Bills, BETs,
Yeah,
those would
BET.
all be allowed in our industrial district under the ordinance we wrote it.
they would or would not.
They
Would.
would
Okay.
in 2009.
And in addition to that, one of the previous uses we just allowed, remember, was the brewery, the Oakdale Brewery. We just allowed that in the industrial district. And because I believe it's listed here too, that any retail establishment that is in character with the industrial is allowed. Yeah, on page 25. Retail uses which have an industrial character in terms of either an activity or operating or department.
I did it on Christmas.
Okay.
I mean, granted, it goes into specific use, but, you know, we use that to allow for things like the brewery in the industrial. And it's mainly due to the fact of the size of the building.
All right.
So I do think,
So for C1, we're looking at 500 feet. We're looking at license. I'm not talking about zoning.
Location.
Oh, you
I'm
said.
talking about C1.
Article C,
Article
yeah.
C1.
We've so read
Article C,
those
section 1.
letters.
All right. We're gonna go 500 feet as a buffer zone around,
That's our recommendation,
Like
1,500 feet.
Let's see what that map looks like.
all right, so let's see what that map looks like. We're gonna consider licensed pre-K facilities, public schools, private schools, K through 12. All right, are we good with that?
Yes.
Okay, sounds like we're good with that, so now let's go on to section C, number 2.
I have a real problem with section C.
I do too, I think we should eliminate it.
I don't
I think we should eliminate it, I don't think we should take parks into consideration.
either. So many things are considered park, and
And so consequently, if, that's my point of view, if somebody has a very strong feeling, floor is open.
The only thing I guess I would say is that parks, by their nature, public parks, invite people to congregate, they invite families to congregate. That's different than people being in their private homes. And so I think there may be, that may make a difference in terms of the location, just like you have children congregating in schools. If you have families and young people congregating in parks, it does, to me, seem to be an environment that you may want to have a buffer zone away from.
what's the difference between, other than private and public, the dark green and the light green? What Is there any other difference?
Just the ownership. Just the dark green is owned by the village
Municipality.
or a municipality, and then the light green is owned by a association. And typically, and one of the reasons you think about that in terms of, mainly for the reasons Leslie just mentioned, and the fact that a public park, anybody can go to a public park. Technically, with private parks, in theory, they do restrict it to the private enjoyment of the individuals of the association. In theory, but most of them are pretty open.
Leslie, I would agree with you as far as parks do bring families in. There are things, but I think I think it might be confusing the consumption of it in a park and what a business is doing at conducting a business such as these, such as the facilities are actually conducting business. Now, if somebody, because of these, there's only one very specific operation where you can take marijuana from the facility, which would be a retailer. A retailer would be the only one where you could walk out of there with marijuana and smoke it. But you can't physically go into a park and make that and consume marijuana in a park. So I think that I would also like to take out the park as a buffer zone as well.
Well, something to consider is that maybe we don't have to put every use into that. Now, think about it. Retailer is the only one that's going to advertise with any kind of signage. All the other use cases are most likely going to remain incognito.
And contained inside the
And
building.
so, any activity is contained inside, and I doubt that any grower is gonna put a big sign on the outside of his building saying marijuana grower, I think they wanna keep that as
It might be
down low as
private.
possible, And so, maybe we just put a buffer zone around parks for retail.
Or just municipal recreation. And we don't worry about private recreation cuts
Private
out
isn't included anyway.
a huge chunk. This whole part of Arts Village Drive is private, right? So we just made it public.
The Scripture Park are you talking about?
No, this,
That's public?
yes. It's, if I remember, and there's another piece that runs down this way in the township. It's 5 feet wide. It's just scrap land they deeded for lakes and called it recreation. It does nothing but causes somebody to come out and mow it a couple times a month. But if you made it municipal recreation, 500 feet, municipal recreation, you're only limited in Scripter, and then you have the Pollyant Trail,
Maybe
Centennial. Well, we
Right, it wouldn't matter. if it's
right, you're right.
But
Centennial
technically, yeah, well, that's probably all I thought was included all along. I guess that's what I was going by.
So Centennial, Scripter, and the Pollyant Trail would be the only municipal parks. And everybody says, decide how they feel about the trail. Because the trail can really cut through a lot of properties.
And once again, that takes us straight down to only in the industrial on Glassell,
Right.
and that's it. So then we would have to end up taking out the buffer of between facilities.
We don't have to do
We could also just specifically say there should be a 500-foot buffer from Scripters Park and Centennial Park.
That's true too, you don't have to say all parks, specifically.
Because we don't
say-
we don't have 50 parks in the city, in the village, so we could just say those two.
What happens if a park pops up?
Well then,
Over on Dayton Street, if they decide to make that a park in that area?
Well, then we
Then
can
that
get
part-
rid of
Do they
it.
plan on making
She
it
could
a
fill
park?
up the dispensary across from my house.
Probably.
well, actually, at any point, it depends on, number one, if there was already a facility located somewhere and then a park popped up, or even a daycare popped up.
Once again, you've got ownership rights, or.
Right, because they were there first.
Yeah.
They're allowed to maintain their use and continue. Now, if a new park pops up and they would like to have the 500-foot buffer, then if they weren't listed in the ordinance currently, like if we went with just Scripters and Centennial, then they would just have to petition the village to amend the zoning ordinance to include the new park.
I'm coming back around to your thoughts about maybe it's really retail establishments that are the important ones to have a park buffer for. And I guess that's a very convincing rationale to me personally.
Okay,
Or I think, eliminating the Pollyant Trail is another possibility, but I think I'm gravitating more, in my mind, toward what you were suggesting as my position.
okay, Mario, is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, we could
So
say,
can we get that granular in
Mhm.
terms of,
oh,
we're gonna specifically deny retail establishments within proximity of these two locations?
Can we list the civil numbers? Only because Scripture Park is incredibly much larger than everything today.
Mhm.
If you list the civil numbers, you know what you're taking at.
The only issue might, we'll definitely find some way to be specific about it. Sometimes signal numbers can just change
Right.
just by the county.
So you name the date.
But there has to be some, but
show
you're right, there
the
should be
whatever.
something that's
Because
specific.
I think Scripture Park is actually bigger than what you show here. Because
Might-
it goes to the trail on Lakeville Road.
Mhm.
Um,
Oh, it goes north, okay.
Yes. I think east, west, south, I think it's fine. But there are trails that lead to Lakeville Road from that park that I think are part of the park that if we name, I don't want one of these parcels to be not included because we didn't name the parcel.
Right.
Which they bordered, it should be fine, but it is what it is. I would like the name of a map and data map and say these are the problems.
That would probably be the best, to like have a specific boundary, or specific parcel identification map. And then if they, because that way if they change it, yeah. Okay.
So in regards to parks, is there a consensus that maybe we should specify certain, what did you call them, Mario?
Parcel.
Parcels.
Simple numbers.
Parcels, and then limit that to just a retail? Would you be good with that?
Limited to just retail?
Yes. So that would be use case B1D off that list.
I mean, me, I could remove it completely. That's me. But I want to do I want to listen to other people's opinions about.
Well, I thought Leslie made a really good idea. I was of that mind as well, wanting to just eliminate park buffers altogether. But ultimately, it comes down to a park is a congregating place
That's true.
for children. And, to have a retail shop right next to a park where people are coming, it's gonna draw curiosity. And once again, it's exposing children to this kind of behavior that maybe you want to shield.
But it might be no different than, you guys are going to the party store and going and hanging out in the park and
No.
drinking beer. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. I mean, it's your police department that's supposed to patrol and take care of that. So if there's wrongdoing that's in the park, it's
I
your
understand, but I'm not controlling activity in the park.
I myself
I'm
don't
only
feel
trying to-
uncomfortable going 500 feet for any use. We don't need Scripture Park being a haven for anything. So if everything's 500 feet is not that much. If we go 500 feet, we should still be able to get properties that are usable. Let's just see what it looks like out there. 500 feet for anything and see what happens. What do you think, Gary?
Would you be good with that, Leslie?
Mhm.
Justin? Kelsey?
Yep.
Jack?
Let's just see what it looks like.
All right, let's try that, Mario. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, now, that said, let's move on to item 3, which is marijuana facilities.
And the only reason this is typically utilized is so that way you, for lack of a better word, so that you don't have a concentration of facilities in one location. So it's up to you whether you feel like a concentration of them would be appropriate, or if you'd like to have that separation from them.
Okay, so what if an entrepreneur came along and it turned out that there were 2 buildings side by side, and one was an appropriate sized warehouse where he can establish a grow, and his wife would want to open up a retail center right next door where they could sell.
He can do both if he wants to.
Apparently you can't.
There would be ways around it. Basically, what they could do
We're
is,
considering
Oh,
a facility buffer.
I hear what you're saying.
That's what I'm trying to get away from. Or not necessarily away from, but I try to come up with scenarios that, okay, where, I can understand that we don't want to create a marijuana alley, right? Where you got 6 shops all competing with each other, and you make a whole district part of the village where marijuana is being dealt, okay? However, the opposite side of that coin is the scenario I spelled out, is I've got a husband and wife team who want to set up a joint venture, and they, one business, one's a grower, one's a retailer, and they're 2 buildings right next to each other.
The
This
shame
would-
on them for not combining the properties and going under one license. This isn't a way for them to get out of, I was gonna do the growing, and I'm gonna do the retail, and we're gonna get away from taxes. If they wanna have properties next to each other, combine them and what's it called, stacking their
right,
licenses.
yeah, actually, that's what I
They
was,
should just stack their licenses, in my opinion. Just my opinion, not the views of the station. Go.
and that's one thing, actually, I realize that we're not addressing here, so I don't want to necessarily delve into that, but it's relevant to your point. Number one, like Mo said, if they are, partners in any way, shape, or form, they could combine the lots and they could suddenly have, the same lot, as long as the boundary around it meets the separation requirements for the create, then they could work that way. Or, but not that way. But the other thing that I feel it seems like appropriate in these facilities, and it also seems to work, is the stacking of the facilities. So it doesn't specifically say it's permitted, but it also doesn't prohibit it. The idea of someone having one building, and then in the back have the grow, in the middle have the processor, and in the front have the retailer. Because that's how a lot of them are currently being constructed right now. And it's beneficial because they typically fit into these kind of size lots that we have on I-1. And the size of them ranges from 200 to 400 plants in the grow facility. Then and it's all, as we'll get into in a moment, when it comes into all indoor activity, everything's done in one building. It's all secured. The state does license it, and they do allow it, but the only things they specifically say is that you must have separate separations and entrances, and they don't mix the employees, and from a security standpoint, we get into a moment. But I guess that's a thing, I don't know, the way I have it, the way it's currently written, it wouldn't prohibit someone from stacking the licenses in one building. Because when we say mixed use, we say other principal uses. I guess we might have to tweak that language to not say other marijuana facilities, but.
So we're worried about marijuana facilities all being in the same location by putting this buffer between them.
Right.
We don't do
More
that,
than-
we don't do that for alcohol, we don't do that for tool shops, we don't do that for a lot of things that are
Well,
businesses.
what we do that for is adult uses. So that's typically where this falls into. The idea that by stacking, creating a row, if you will, is gonna have deleterious impact on and suddenly it's gonna become strip club row, or suddenly it's become pot sellers row. So that's why in adult uses, they have that separation. And that's the only, but once again, that's how you feel. If you feel you wanna have that same kind of approach to adult use marijuana facilities at the get-go, or if you just want to say, maybe you do want to keep them in one location in the village and nowhere else.
But isn't that discrimination if you're doing that and you're not doing it with alcohol and everything else?
No, it's permitted, because for adult uses, because the adult use has that history, and it's gone through the Supreme Court, and they do allow for that, because of the character of the use and the evidence that they can have deleterious impact on adjacent properties.
Jack, did you have a question?
So whether that survives current phrases now, I don't know. We'll have to see, but once again, it's up to you guys.
Jack, you have a question? Or
No,
comment?
my comment is, for example, the old Royal Oak Boring Building That's on 2 lots, but it's connected with a bridge over the top of it. They couldn't have a processing in one sidwell and a grow in another sidwell because they're not 500 feet apart.
Correct, as is written now, you're right. As is written now.
But they could put it down in,
However, they could go before the zoning board and ask for those 2 lots to be joined back up, or do a reverse split. And I think if they had a good commercial argument for that, my guess is the zoning board would probably say, okay, no problem. All right, what difference does it make to the zoning, what difference does it make to the zoning board? A commercial operator comes before you and says, I have 2 adjacent properties that I want to join together for commercial reasons.
And actually, when it comes, just for your information, when it comes to land combinations, it's just a matter of making sure that the proposed combination meets the zoning ordinance requirements for minimum lot size, lot area, access, and chances are, if they're 2 small ones right now, even if they're legally non-conforming, usually when you say, well, you're getting bigger in any way, shape, or form, so you're going to be at least in substantial compliance now because you've added land area. So usually combinations are never an
That's
issue.
considerable. That's what I would think. Just not having sat on this ZBA, I would guess that that's probably what it was.
Maybe one idea that, that I maybe have is that it looks as though, the industrial avenue is about one of the only places that we can go, right? And we don't want it to make it marijuana alley by any means, but at the same time, we want to be able to have establishments there, right? The majority of it. What happens if we said, all right, I-1 is where it's basically allowed, but then we can say, all right, we would like to issue this many licensed growers and this many retailers. We'll give this many in this very specific area, and then there wouldn't have to be a buffer. And then we wouldn't have to have a parks buffer as well, because everything would be in I-1. But we believe that we would like to only have, let's say, 2 growers, for example. 1 retail facility, 1 processor, and 1 of this, and however many licenses we allow is that's all, and it doesn't make a difference where in the industrial complex it's at. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, so we don't want 15 retailers in our community, right? It just doesn't make sense. 1 would be perfect, let's say. Maybe 2 might be perfect. But, do we don't want all of Glass B to be grow facilities as well. So let's say we say we'll give a maximum of 2 licenses for grow facilities.
But why wouldn't you want them all to be grow facilities? Frankly, I wouldn't mind that. Like I said, I believe the grow facility is going to be incognito.
I'm just giving out let's say a number for example.
And I agree, and I think it's a very sensible approach,
Yeah.
but, to me, once again, the retail establishments are gonna be the ones that draw the most public,
I think it's going to,
and
the
they're
retail is
gonna
going
be the ones where you see the heavy traffic of consumers.
That's correct, and I think that is one of your biggest, let's say, issues related to, the community as well, is because that's the place where you actually go and people actually physically come here and
Correct.
actually physically get it.
Correct.
The other ones you'll never know. You'll
Yeah.
never know that there's a processor.
You drive by warehouses all the time.
And
you
it's
have
no
idea
different than
what's
Big
going on
Pharma
inside.
coming in here and having a pharmaceutical company come in.
Mhm.
It would be, that's doing some sort of, and it actually would bring in probably a lot more people for working wise, but.
So you're advocating, considering, basically creating a district within the village that we would permit facilities use, but limiting the number of facilities.
Correct.
And instead of saying it can't be 500 feet from this or that,
That's
we basically just reserve potential use.
That's correct.
But limit the number of uses within whatever that district boundary is that we decide.
That's
Could be-
correct.
Could be the I-1 district.
And that would be our control.
And it would, that's right, and we would say that, all right, we would go right down the list. We would go right down the list that we had and say, all right, so our, so marijuana growers. We would vote and say, all right, we would allow 3 grow facilities, okay? Micro businesses, we would allow 1. Processor, we would allow 2. Retailer, we would allow 1. Safety compliance, we would allow whatever it is. And just go down the list and say, all right, this is how many we would allow. We can always increase it if we would like to, and we can always decrease them if we would like to, right? That number, and that way it's a very specific area. Then we don't have to worry about parks. We don't have to worry about schools because we already know that it's all here, essentially. There's no, it's not in the downtown, it's.
All right, so we have at least, for a chart, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 I-1s. We have four areas which are zoned I-1.
Yeah.
We have Glassby.
All
We
of
have-
Glassby.
We have the one up here next to the subdivision, and then we have 2 at the north end of town.
Okay.
And maybe 3, I mean, I don't know what that little corner is
That
right
little
there.
corner is part of the stamping plan. That street is no longer there.
Okay,
The street's abandoned.
okay.
Gotcha.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 sections that are I-1.
Yep.
This is a really good idea, Justin.
One.
I think that this is worthy of consideration, as long as it's legal.
I mean, because once again, the thing is that they're all basically consume an industrial building. The only one that would not would be a retail facility. And me personally, I would not personally want a retail facility down by Frosty Way, right? And that would be, and we're looking at C2, there's only 2 very specific spots for it. One's around the corner, right? Let's say it would be on 24, and it's a vacant lot currently right now, that's where the tanning salon is, and it's around one of the major corners. You'll have a lot of traffic coming in and out of it. I think that would be let's say, a problem for us in the future. And then C2 is a pretty, that's, you have your Little Caesars there, you have Frosty Boy there, you have Art and Dick's there. It's kind of I think that would be the best location for a retail facility. I think you would have a hard time with the community accepting that.
What about the small parcels to the north? Aren't they too
Correct.
close to residential areas?
I don't think they would be, but I think if you would drive down there and to see all the traffic that kind of heads around that.
No, I guess, I'm wondering, doesn't the state, or doesn't the ordinance that you propose also provide distance from residential?
No.
Oh, it doesn't? Oh, okay.
But one thing to keep in mind, basically, I mean, Justin's approach is definitely an alternative, and it's definitely something that other communities have used. And we could even be more specific, and we could specifically say Glassby Street. I guess when I started with the buffers and started with that, basically came to the idea with this is that this approach right now with all our buffers and including the C2, I also specifically say that it has to be frontage on Washington Street. So it
That's
eliminates,
the other caveat, yeah.
so it eliminates the idea of anything happening over on Burdick, but it basically allows for the possibility of a retailer on Washington,
Show me where.
like next to
That's the
the,
fire station.
no, north of that, the tanning salon.
108, 110, and 112.
The tanning salon.
Yeah,
That's the one place,
that's the only place.
yeah.
If we were to set, like Justin was saying, the number of growers and the number of retailers over on Gillespie Street, if we set it to 4, can we increase it if we get enough people who want to maybe come in? Or once we set it, it's set?
You can definitely increase it. One thing I will say, you probably have to ask the attorney if the quantity restriction, how strong that is, simply because it has been used in other municipalities and it's ongoing, but I don't know if that might be a situation of where it's being zoned out. Because I could see, and it'd be a very narrow argument, but I could see some person saying that they,
If
You
can
pick
make
this
the argument
arbitrary
that we
number.
made,
You made this, exactly, you picked this arbitrary number.
If you make the if you make an argument, or if you create an argument, it can be made.
Right.
And the argument being is, look, you allow them, but you only allow 4, and you could allow 6 based on your ordinance.
So you're zoning me out, because I'm number 5.
Yeah, should have been here faster.
Yeah?
Right, and so
Should
I
have
don't,
read more.
and I don't know, once again, I mean, I personally, I think that, completely viable, because we could make arguments about the fact that it's, based on the size of our community, this is what we feel is appropriate for the size and scale of our
You have to
community.
say it that way.
You'd have to say it that way, just that way,
The
you'd
size
have
of our
to, you'd have to say that because of the size of the village, 4 is enough, 4 is
Yes.
enough for us.
Yes.
And that's why we came to the conclusion of that number, that's why we didn't pick 32 or whatever, you know? We didn't think we needed 32 of them. But the only issue,
Permitted uses in the I-1 district, they must be located at a state identified major street, which industrial drive's a major street. Rose, Church Street's a local street. Lodge Street's a local street. That makes this, the one on Maple Road is still a major street. But that lets out all of this. If we make it required to be on a major street for the state, Act 51 Rose, then that lets all this out.
right, I mean, we could specifically say only on Glassview too, if you wanted to.
Well, I'd like to consider the flex also.
I don't like to name a street.
But you're right, Mo, that would work. That would
Little more
like credence to
subtle.
it, that would add credence to it.
What do you
But
think?
sorry, I just wanted to, the reason for my long diatribe right there was just the idea of, by using all these buffers and listing C2, the idea was if you wanted to allow for the potential of someone locating on Washington, or M24, so it's up to you if you feel like, should we allow the possibility of something on M24, or is the industrial sufficient, we should just concentrate them there, and we can definitely concentrate them there, and that be well within the right to do that.
Is there an incentive or?
Oh, you're good, please go.
Is there a good reason to help make uses potentially available in the north of town to help with those properties, for example? Is that an important consideration or not? The other thing I'm wondering about, I've heard of lotteries being used to assign licenses. How does that work?
Though that's, that's in situations municipalities, we were reacting to the demand at the time, and so they are trying, basically, they're trying to find a way out of it, out of themselves and out of lawsuits, so they come up with that kind of system.
We're gonna have 3, and it's the first 3 we pull out of the basket
Exactly,
kind of thing.
right,
Not
because,
so many of this kind, so many.
right, because other communities have gone with the idea of the date of application. So your date of application makes you your priority order, and you're applicant number 1, you're number 2, 3, 4, and then just so on and so forth.
Until you get 15 applications on day one.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And that's where a lot of it.
Yeah.
So
But
that
it's
is
the first,
good, that
but
is
it
a
would be
good
the
point.
first, let's say, whatever one you get, first come, first serve. I mean, it's,
Yeah, the issue,
Big time.
the issue would be, 2, other communities, what they've done is they write a general law ordinance that identifies priority criteria, and then you say, this makes you priority 1, this makes you priority 3. Their approach was to say that for those that provided sewer and water taps, because sewer and water taps are, a method of revenue, and so they thought that, and the reasoning for it is to say the level of investment. So they're saying, if, for example, if it's an existing site and they already have an existing water and sewer tap, and they're putting in $2 million into the building, if there's another site and they don't have any taps, they're putting $2 million into the building, and the village is getting sewer and water taps. We don't collect, I don't think we would collect the fees for those, do we? Sewer and water taps, because they go there.
Depends, what is it, change of use or new?
In this case,
It's
it's
Just be a new use.
It's an increase in use.
Change of use and it's an increase, you can charge them for it.
You can charge, the village can charge you for it. So, because does the village provide water? I should know that.
Yeah.
Yes.
The village, so it's a village water,
Mhm.
and then, but it's sewer's county.
Sewer's
No,
still,
it's ours.
still village, it's still under the village.
There you go. So one way you can do it is you either measure the level of investment by that, like by doing priorities. And you can come up with other criteria in terms of the level of investment. For those situations in which, on day one, 15 people show up, and then they, they do that. Situations occur though, where sometimes, you'd have to craft the language specifically, so that way, someone doesn't say, oh, well, I'm gonna put in 2 water taps, I'm gonna I'm gonna make an 8-inch mains because I
I
wanna
don't think our
have.
water tap and sewer tap fees are so
Substantial.
exorbitant
Egregious, yeah.
that would make a difference.
Well, I'm saying that in order to,
I know.
in terms of jockeying a position,
Right.
someone might say, oh, well, now I'm gonna put in 2, and, oh, well, I'm gonna put in a fire retention too, so I'm gonna put another one. It's the only thing is you're gonna eventually get this jockeying a position, at some point. So actually, that is a good point in terms of a valid way to do this. It
Could we
could
make
possibly
note to
be.
come back to that? We
Yeah,
get
yeah,
everything.
So,
But a lottery
Yes.
system, a
Get the
lottery
big
system,
part, taking care of it, they could be how big.
but a lottery system might be a good way to deal with
We
that.
don't have bribery here, take this pound and I'll let you.
if,
None of us buy a new house anytime in the next 2 years.
all right, hold on. If we were to attempt by zoning to limit the number of licenses, I-1 flats, for instance, does buffer still play a role in this at all?
I don't
In
think
like,
so.
especially like between facility buffers, I guess once,
And I'll tell you why I don't think the buffer thing basically goes into effect is because this right here is a map of 1,000 feet. There's no parks related to where we're gonna have, so the parks are irrelevant anymore. The school buffer is irrelevant anymore. We can still keep them in there, but they'll be irrelevant. The only thing that would not be irrelevant, or that we'd have to just take out, would be the between businesses. And then that would essentially go away as well, because we would say how many we want in our village. That way we can control it, and then we can see how is this working. Is this working good? It's our little petri dish of seeing, all right, this is working great. Let's add one more. Or hey, this is not working good. Or maybe hey, the retail facility is good and everybody in town's great with it. Now let's open up C1. Let's just use this as a small test facility or a test area in which we can see how this helps our community, is beneficial to us, and then we also meet the needs of the people that want it in our community, and it also meets the needs of the people that aren't really super excited about having our community.
How would we determine how many facilities we should?
well,
We just talked about. So basically, we would say, all right, how many grow facilities do you think we should have in our facility, or in our community? 2, 3,
6.
1?
6.
Okay. So Mario, were you saying a few minutes ago that we might want to get the attorney to weigh in on that in case it opens us up in some way?
I have a list right here of every community right now that's doing marijuana, actually from the medical side, and each one of what they're allowing as far as grower class A, grower class B, processors, provisioning centers, and safety compliance. Some of them had said there's no cap, some have limited it to 1, some have 0 in these things. They are choosing in their community what they want from the
For a
medical
local
side.
place.
Yep, and it's based on how large they are. Pontiac, for example, there's basically no cap whatsoever because they need help in their community. And they're really large. Us, on the other hand, we're really small. We could always use help, but we don't need 15 retailers.
No,
I still
but
have
two would be nice.
in my democratic mind, from physics, from government class,
I know what you're gonna say.
I
It's
still have
not
a problem.
it's not a monopoly.
I
It's
still,
not a
I
monopoly.
know what you're saying.
So what is it?
I still have a problem with one.
nobody said one.
No, I didn't say, I just have a problem with the number one.
I'm trying to see what.
Okay, so what is it, okay, so, how does that bear on this discussion?
Competition. If you won, there's no competition.
No, nobody, okay, well, nobody said one.
One lot
I didn't say
on
maybe
Gillespie
that, I'm just saying, I have a problem with one.
This one developer here.
There's only one, that's a corner lot next to the old Royal Oak Boring, and the one on the north side by Round Lake. It's the only two lots on
Yeah.
Gillespie Street.
I know the one guy.
Jack, I think one thing you'll find is once this ordinance is
Yeah.
written,
You'll see property come through available.
suddenly a lot of properties will become.
Yeah.
For example, the properties that I have.
Or no, a lot of, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm just gonna make the observation.
Yeah.
A lot of partnerships will be offered.
Yeah,
Most of the people that do
Yeah.
this tend to remain.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Because what happens is, warehouses that are not for sale, all of a sudden get sold.
Right.
Because, like my warehouses in Pontiac, I had literally 20 people, because nobody knew where it was gonna be at in Pontiac. So what they would do is they would approach you and put you in contracts and say, hey, look I'll give you this amount of money, and you're like, all right, what do I sign? All right, but that's just what happens.
You know, everything here is vacant, right?
What's that?
Everything here is vacant.
Mhm, Yep.
And there's a lot of
And- but
properties
see-
in Gillespie that's available.
But that's fantastic,
Yeah.
because the warehouses get built, and that's how you get things on tax
Absolutely.
rolls, and that's why grow facilities would be pretty nice over on this side.
That's why I would almost say limit the number of retail facilities and don't limit the other ones.
But that's one of the things where we talk about each one and say, all right,
Yeah.
here, this is what I think would be best for our community. Grow
Right.
facilities would be maybe great for our community, because they're gonna build a 30,000 square foot warehouse that is brand new, state of the art, and
Yeah.
all looks really fantastic. That's
Yeah.
great for our tax roll.
Yeah.
One retail facility would be, whatever, even if we had zero, whatever we decide or we think would be best for us, that would be most beneficial for what we want.
Just a point of information, because you're absolutely right, but just remember that, I think it's a good point too, that the building itself and the value of the building will add property tax value to the village. When it comes to the marijuana tax, the only way you can access that revenue, the 1/10 of the tax, the excise tax,
That's correct.
is for the retail.
We're
Just
basically,
remember
you
that.
have to remember that we're getting zero tax dollars from the sale of marijuana.
From the excise tax.
Well,
But
you
you're-
guys
but it's a good
stop,
point, but it's a good point, you get the
license
property.
fees.
But the
tax.
property is, that's the whole point of why Pontiac gave zero tax on any of that stuff, and they chose very specific locations. Because that's the areas that are the most hard hit, that's the areas they want to be redeveloped, and, because you have to do very stringent things for your property to get it up to code.
But you're still getting license fees, right?
Yes.
$5,000.
That's a lot more than my property taxes. I don't know what your property taxes are, but my question is,
Yearly.
if we allow unlimited growers and they're stacking, now what are we allowing?
Without anything, you have to probably define whether a grow facility, we're gonna allow grow facilities based on the number of licenses or just a grow facility. For example, a grow facility in the village could have 3 or 2 Class B licenses or something to that effect, so they, like volume, they can do it. So do we limit the grow facility, the structure, or limit the actual number of licenses?
It would be the number of licenses, because let's say you could stack those, for example, let's say we had 4 grow facilities, and we had 4 processors. Once those licenses were gone, we could stack them into 4 properties, or you could have 8 different facilities, 8 different properties, if they stack them or they don't stack. But there's a limit to the number of licenses you give out. Maybe stacking, I think, would be relevant at that, or not irrelevant, but it's based on the number of licenses we allow.
Gary, you were talking about the flex area too, you were thinking that should be added to these
I
locations?
just throw it out there as a,
Because I was gonna ask you
An
about
additional
that, but then
space.
there's the question about access by road, by major road.
Flex is definitely hitting the major road.
Powell is right there.
Okay,
What's considered a flex property, I'm sorry?
That's the
blue.
the blue F.
Well, the Blue F right now has stage 1 home of Beehive Homes on it.
That's right.
That's on the west hand side of Glassby there. They own all the way up to Division Street. Property F is Cast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. On the other side, in that flex district, you're gonna be having a joint planning commission meeting here pretty soon. That property just is under contract right now to be sold, to go back into the PUD that we discussed years and years ago.
That went so well.
So Barron's selling it back to the PUD?
No, I said across the street.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay, gotcha.
From Barron. That's, it's a PUD that even Mo worked on and I worked on probably.
Even
15
Mo.
I heard that too.
Well, we both worked on it in a planning commission years and years ago. They're selling it, it's coming back right now, they're going through their preliminary right now.
So, so there would be potential property availability here or not? I'm not,
Between Division Street and the stamping plant maybe,
Which is north of it.
right?
It would be, if we include the words major street, you follow Glassby up.
Yeah.
mhm,
That first line
mhm,
that runs east and west
right?
is most of Beehive. Although I think it actually goes north of that line.
Yeah,
But everything to the east of Glassby is vacant
Okay.
and nothing. If you went west, now you no longer front a major street.
Right, okay.
And maybe we can get a list of major local streets and stuff.
So what's the major street stipulation? I guess I'm not getting that part.
In theory, the major streets are
C1
usually. In theory, the major streets are usually be something that's anticipated and used as a classification for meeting traffic capacity.
Major
Or
streets
maybe
take you
You don't
somewhere.
want it on
Local
Park Street,
streets
and have
just
a bunch
get
of
you in
cars
the
coming
neighborhood.
down the
Well, no, I
road.
get that, and it's, I mean, I guess I'm trying to understand this.
Dennison Street.
Hold on, just a
Okay.
minute. That's a residential area, that's not,
But part of it's major, part of it's more local. So that's
so
okay.
the point being is that it has to be on an established, platted, is this right? That it has to be on an established, platted street, as opposed to, here's an industrial area, and some of this area over here is available via an alley, if you will. It's not a platted street per se, it doesn't really have a name, but it's a thoroughfare, it's an alley, and it services all the businesses located
But
on
they
that.
did it off a major street.
It would prevent someone from utilizing, getting an easement across someone else's property to get into that area.
Let me
If we
Let me show you an
stipulate-
example of what you're talking about right here. This property right here, oop, get out of here. Let me find it now. Okay, Glassby. This property right here has 3 buildings,
Yeah,
all serviced by one driveway off a major street.
are they 3 separate businesses?
Yes.
Oh, well, see, there's
That's a workout
that's a perfect
facility,
example.
that's Trace and Tool, and that's Tool Tech.
So those 3 businesses all access a major road via an alley,
A private
a
drive.
private drive. So that's legal.
It is.
Are we prohibited from allowing that place in the back
No,
be a marijuana facility?
what they're saying is you don't want them on Powell Street going to F, to flex there. You don't want them on Powell Street. That's a residential area all through there. So a major street, it's a street, but it's all residential on the south side. The north is flex, and that's the only street to get through it to. is a residential street. Whereas Glassby is more known as a busier street. It's not quite the trunk line of M24.
Yeah,
It's not a secondary road like a subdivision street. It's more of a thoroughfare.
yeah,
It's an arterial.
yeah.
For instance, Dennison Street, the first block of Dennison Street, from M24 to Hudson,
Yeah,
that's a major street.
because it's on.
From Hudson west, that's a local street.
Oh,
Because it no longer really takes you anywhere but home.
okay.
And there's lots of weird things that make it a major
How come I
street.
get so many people cutting through my neighborhood?
Because they all want to come to your home, Gary, I love you so
No, I
much.
appreciate that, but they don't. They just drive right by, 150 of them a day.
You want to nice drive, it's a
Yes.
major
No.
street.
It makes me sick. I tell you what, when we're done with this ordinance, I want somebody to please make a motion to put up signs to prevent cut-through.
There's no such thing as a cut-through. It's a
Public street.
Yeah, no, I'm
I
sorry.
drive on your street all the time.
If there was on a street up
Oh, I walk every time I drive by.
I see, I wave.
Can I
Okay,
suggest
go ahead,
that,
I digress.
can I suggest that, because I think we've done a lot of work,
You missed
maybe
my
we're getting
comment.
tired.
Yeah,
That we let Mario map out some of the things we talked about.
Don't be sorry.
For informational reasons.
I have one.
And that we come back to how many of what kind of facilities and where, just to formalize that in our next meeting, kind of picking up where we are now. Is that suitable for everyone?
do you want to offer numbers now?
No,
You don't want to do that now?
no, that's why I'm saying, I think we should
Research it, come
resolve
back
that
with
next
numbers.
time,
So
at the top of the.
Come back to the table with numbers that we think would be appropriate for our community.
I think we should discuss it, I think, we might all have different ideas, but I feel like I want to think that through.
I think that's one thing that's good about that, doing the work now, is you'll have the maps in front of you, and you'll see the quantity that the buffer is going to provide you. And then you'll know that, all right, this is how many the quantities a buffer would provide alternative, but then you could discuss, just saying,
Then we
all
get
right,
information.
do we feel like it's too much or it's not enough? And if it's not enough, then the option of listing them just quantity, it's definitely, definitely used and it's
See,
definitely
you
possible.
don't have 150 cars driving by your house.
We get a major local street map also.
Yeah.
So they can just
What I
see
would look
the
for
difference
is
between
a map with the circles that show us anywhere you can't do it, the numbers presented like those who wanted. Changing I did want to make, if you're gonna do the J instead of the H, all the H's should be changed in A1, and I think it's all in A1.
I think, one equals another.
I think, I'm gonna include that sentence that,
Yeah, please just do that for you. That's
within the
fine.
village of Oxford.
Put that sentence in
Yeah.
there so that we know it,
Right.
and the state knows it when they come back and says, how's your ordinance?
Mhm.
Doing great. We need to see it.
Yeah.
You can use it as a
We
model.
spell it correctly, you guys spell it wrong.
Yeah, you guys, we spelled it correctly. Okay, good job, you guys. Are you good, Leslie?
Yes, I
Mo?
just feel like I don't want to make decisions when I'm this tired.
Okay, I know, because I've been up since 5. It's a
Do
long
probably
day.
meeting this council.
You slept in very much.
No,
Just to give an idea where we're going, and if there is.
yeah, it's all public record.
Are you good, Mo?
Well,
Good to see
I'm always good.
you. Justin?
I'm good.
Kelsey?
Secure transporter's not on the definition list, so if we're including all of them,
Mhm.
I like to do that just to cover our hand.
Right.
that's the only comment.
Okay, good, thank you. Jack, are you good?
Yeah.
Rose, Miss Rose?
Okay, one more question.
Just a second.
Everybody's done.
Rose has the floor.
I'm good, but I'd like to thank Mo for providing me to be giving the pizza for us.
Should we
Thank you,
make-
Mo.
should we make
It's
a
what I
motion?
live for.
Should we make a motion?
Why?
To thank
This
Mo
is
for
pretty good
pizza?
pizza.
Are we ready to adjourn?
Well, I'd like to know what everybody wants for a snack next time. Do we want pizza? Do we want veggies and fruit? Do we want meat? What do we want?
What, are you gonna just buy fruit or buy?
If we're gonna do this every
Are you
Saturday.
gonna buy? You can't buy.
She's getting.
You know what? I make $460 a year being on the village council. Let me spend it.
Yeah, that's good.
Pile grows.
You guys want veggies and fruit? Was pizza good?
Let's get mini subs.
I'm on it.
You know, just get a sub platter from Subway.
I'm on it.
What about from
Or from our
Witches?
from Witches, from our
You know
local,
what?
It'll be from the village somewhere.
It'll be,
there you go.
you know, witches might be a little bit more expensive, but that's.
I'll gladly contribute.
I got most of my money back this time. You guys make this a money making deal.
Yeah, right. You don't have to file a 1099.
That's why she's doing it.
You got two big pizzas left over.
Yeah, that's okay.
They go to the
Left for
cops.
the cops, probably.
All right, so, Mario, I think you have your marching orders.
Yes.
Good luck with that. Thank you very, very much for all the work you do for us again. I really appreciate it. I know we all do. And you did a real good job of facilitating this. Thank you very much.
So,
All right.
so just to
Yes.
reiterate, so we're coming back to the table next, or whatever, our next meeting specifically for this, and we should come to the table with numbers, is that what we decided that we're gonna do?
Well, you know, depending upon what our next meeting is.
It'll be, should be the
Well,
second meeting in
that
August.
would be just the second meeting, but
Well, the first meeting we could
Rose-
discuss it.
Rose left this open such that we could discuss
discuss
this.
it if there's nothing.
if there's
no
time.
other business.
So, you know, I have to tell you that I feel a certain degree of pressure, right or wrong, to keep this ball rolling. and
Can you
keep it
get the
moving.
stuff together by the, I mean, do we have anything
Is
on
that-
the meeting
is that
that's
too
coming
soon,
up?
or-
No. I can-
No,
I-
yeah,
we have
Tuesdays,
people.
so.
Bella Sarah.
Well, Mario, I have to say that you should probably be prepared then for the first meeting in August.
Yeah.
Because, you never know.
Right,
I
exactly.
mean, I.
Well, from what I know, currently, I think the only thing that could be on our agenda is if we had Village Ridge come back, and I don't think
Yeah.
they said anything.
They owe fees.
Right.
Yeah, the information is, you know,
We
they
have
have not
the
provided
fifth
yet.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Nothing in writing, no response to,
So
you
we
know,
can do it
issues
on the
that
30th.
Road brought up. or anything like
Right.
that, So,
And that'd be the key, is that, because you wanted specifically the engineer's comments, and they provided them, and so the applicant needs to reply, so.
Okay.
And unless they get something to us by Friday,
yeah, actually, it should have really.
it should have been by now.
All right, so if we
So,
have,
yeah,
if we have no other business for the first meeting, hold on, first meeting in August, should we meet to continue this discussion, or should we wait?
Yes, definitely.
All right, so Madam Secretary, if you'd be kind enough to schedule a meeting for the first Tuesday of August, if that's the correct date, and we'll have items on the agenda.
Yeah.
No, it's August. We
No,
only-
because we only have two meetings, we have first
The
and
first
third.
and third.
But the next Tuesday, I think we're gonna have an extra week.
Right,
Is
that's
what
what I
she's
said.
saying.
That's what I said, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It'll
election.
be like
The
the,
6th.
oh, and
Yes.
the
And I'm
sixth.
saying that I get an extra,
I
I
will
get an
have, I
extra
will
week,
not
so
be
I
at
have
the
no
meeting the
excuse, so I
sixth.
think it's gonna be.
Right, and that, me also. So.
Oh, yeah,
There you go.
I get an
I will
extra
not
week,
be
so there's
Okay.
no excuse
All right,
now.
so we'll schedule a meeting for the third Tuesday in August, and we'll meet again in a month from now. Yeah,
What about a special meeting on July 30th, since there's 5 Tuesdays this month?
what's the
What
consensus?
was the
That's
issue?
not really, well, I don't know, Mario could be all
Right,
this
what was the
stuff.
issue with the first meeting in
August 6th.
August?
That's election.
Oh, yeah, we can.
I run it up precinct, she
And
runs
these two will be
precinct.
absent for that night.
Which you can still meet without us, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm.
I'll just change whatever you do.
All right.
If you wanted to
So
do
August
the
is-
30th,
August 20th?
if you wanted to July,
No, let's
Thirtieth.
You want to have an extra, that's fine. I think you guys, everybody's been working very hard, pat yourselves on the back. We'll go to August 20th, we're doing good.
All right, I'm good with that.
Um,
Thank you,
But
Madam
I would
Secretary.
say this, the village attorney would like to stop by the meeting. Does everybody feel like we're in a place where he might do that, or should we wait? Do we have a little more going? He didn't really give me a, hey, I wanna come tomorrow, but yeah, I'm gonna come to one of those.
I think he can come, but I don't think I'm gonna ask him to make an assessment of this yet. I don't think we've made enough progress yet to really,
For an attorney?
yeah.
Oh, they can work.
you have to pay him.
No,
And he's
he's welcome.
expensive.
He's always welcome.
He's got an incredible
$100 an
retainer,
hour.
we don't pay him much.
He's welcome to come, but I don't think I'm gonna press him yet for
Okay. I just thought I'd ask,
a judgment or
I mean, he's not in a hurry.
opinion.
He just mentioned he'd like to come to a meeting, and
He's always welcome. Why wouldn't you?
I don't think he's that excited to come up, but I'll let you know.
I think maybe by September we'll have something
So we are not having a meeting.
They don't have a year.
Our deadline is basically June 30th
Next year.
of next year.
Okay.
That's our sunset.
All right.
The interesting thing is,
I would-
November 1st
You're
is
out for dinner.
the new state deadline, which doesn't affect us.
Subs.
But is it just an incentive to keep going and it's another number?
All right. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Support.
All right, Madam Secretary? Madam Secretary, I have a motion on the table to adjourn. I have a second on that, and I
We
would
missed 9, 10,
all those,
11, 12.
oh, Lord, really?
You can.
It's gotta be in.
That's the reason why he sits next to you, to kind of like remind you.
All
We
right.
needed him last week.
All right,
Yes.
so
There's nobody to poke him
we're
yesterday.
done with item 8A. We have no new business. We have no public for a comment.
Excuse me, I have no comment.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you, Connie. Mario, any further?
On the trailer.
Madam Secretary, any further? Any, okay, so Jack, would you like to give us a township?
I could go on for about an hour.
No, I don't think you'll get, I don't think that.
Nothing that's busting out.
Ms. Rose for ZBA?
Nothing.
Pete, any comments from the DDA? All right, no. All right, now I would entertain that motion.
So moved, support.
All right, Madam Secretary, I have a motion to adjourn and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed say nay. All right, we're adjourned.